In the small province of Bukidnon in the Philippines, Dionysia lived in a simple wooden house with a zinc roof. Her graying hair and time-worn face told stories of sacrifices and hard work to raise her children alone. The youngest of them, Emmanuel, had left home years ago, carrying only a bag of old clothes and dreams bigger than the mountains surrounding their village. Dionysia woke up every day before sunrise to sell fruits at the local market. Her hands calloused from constant work, but her heart remained full of pride for her son who, she now heard, had become an important name in boxing. Neighbors frequently brought newspaper clippings or commented on Emmanuel's fights, but Dionysia could hardly believe the stories. How could her little boy, who used to help her carry fruits to the market, now be fighting in international arenas? News arrived in fragments in that remote corner of the Philippines, and Dionysia hesitated to believe the magnitude of her son's success, fearing they were merely exaggerations from well-intentioned people trying to cheer up an aging mother. On her small radio, she sometimes caught broadcasts mentioning her son's name, but they were fleeting moments, interrupted by poor reception in the mountains. For years, Emmanuel regularly sent money, but Dionysia refused to use it to improve her own condition, saving every cent in an old cookie tin, telling herself that money was for emergencies. She continued her daily routine of hard work, fearing her son's luck might end at any moment. Communication between mother and son was scarce, limited to rare calls on special days when Emmanuel managed to reach her through the village's only public telephone. Dionysia always ended conversations quickly, saying she didn't want to waste her son's money on expensive calls, not realizing that Emmanuel could now buy the entire telephone company if he wanted. To her, he was still the skinny boy who had left, and she couldn't visualize the successful life he had built. In Manila, Emmanuel, now known worldwide as Manny Pacquiao, finished another day of intense training. His athletic body showed the marks of years dedicated to boxing, while his mind was divided between the next international fight and thoughts about his mother, who persistently refused to leave Bukidnon to visit him. His mansion in Forbes Park, Manila's most exclusive neighborhood, remained partially empty for him, despite all its grandeur and luxury, as it lacked the presence of the woman who had sacrificed everything so he could have a chance in life. The boxer looked at the photos on his wall, images of him with presidents, Hollywood stars and world champions, but the absence of a photo with his mother in that new life deeply troubled him. His personal assistants, Malaya and Bayani, observed with concern how the world champion seemed distant after each frustrated call to his mother, who always refused his invitations to visit Manila, claiming she didn't belong in that world and would feel out of place among important people. After a revealing conversation with Jinky, his wife Manny realized his mother might never take the first step. Jinky, with her quiet wisdom, suggested that perhaps it was time for a different approach. If the mountain won't come to Mohammed, Mohammed goes to the mountain. The plan began to take shape that night. Instead of continuing to insist that Dionysia visit Manila, they would personally fetch her, without prior notice, giving her little room to refuse. The operation's logistics were carefully planned by Bayani, who arranged a private helicopter to land at the local school's soccer field in Bukidnon. Manny insisted he didn't want any fanfare. It would be just him, Jinky, and their two oldest children, Jimuel and Michael Stephen, on this special mission to bring the family matriarch to experience the new reality that her sacrifice had helped build. The helicopter's arrival in the small village of Bukidnon caused an instant commotion among residents. Children ran toward the soccer field, adults abandoned their tasks, and elderly people came to the doors of their simple homes to witness the extraordinary event. When Manny descended from the aircraft, there was a moment of astonished silence before a wave of screams and applause swept through the crowd. The national hero had returned to his roots, but this time not as the hungry boy who had left, but as a global icon. Politely ignoring requests for autographs and photos, Manny and his family walked down the dirt road toward Dionysia's house, guided by childhood memories and the enthusiastic directions of local residents. The small wooden house remained exactly as Manny remembered, as if time had frozen in that piece of his history, dramatically contrasting with the dizzying evolution his own life had experienced. Dionysia was in the backyard, washing clothes in a tub when she heard the commotion. Drying her hands on her worn apron, she walked to the front of the house to discover the source of the unusual uproar. Her aging eyes took a few moments to process the image of her son, now a strong and confident man, standing in front of her wooden gate. Time seemed to suspend when their gazes met. The boy who had left and the mother who had stayed behind, now reunited under circumstances neither could have imagined. Tears came instantly for both, as Manny stepped forward to embrace his mother, lifting her slightly off the ground with the force of his emotion. Dionysia, normally a woman of few affectionate demonstrations, now sobbed openly in her son's arms, unable to contain years of repressed longing. Jinky and the children observed the scene with their own teary eyes, witnessing a moment that transcended fame and fortune, reducing everything to its purest essence, the love between mother and son. After the emotional moment of reunion, Manny formally introduced Jinky and his children to their grandmother, who examined them with a mixture of shyness and admiration. The children, educated in the best international schools, now stood before the woman who had harvested bananas and mangoes to survive, raising their father with iron determination and unconditional love. It was a clash of worlds that only blood and family love could unite in such a natural and profound way. The small group entered the modest house, where Manny was immediately transported to his childhood. The familiar smell of cooking rice, the cheap fabric curtains his mother had sewn by hand, the wooden floor that creaked in the same places, everything remained intact, like a living museum of his origins. Dionysia, recovering from the initial surprise, now moved nervously around the kitchen, anxious to offer something to the unexpected visitors, despite Jinky's gentle protests that they didn't need to worry about food. While Dionysia prepared herbal tea in chipped cups, Manny noticed the old cookie tin on a high shelf. Curiously, he asked about it, and his mother reluctantly revealed that she kept all the money he had sent over the years there, an amount that, if added up, could easily buy several houses like hers. The revelation left Manny deeply moved, confronting him with the disconnect between the financial empire he had built and the unwavering simplicity with which his mother continued to live. The hours passed quickly as they shared stories, and Manny showed photos on his state-of-the-art cell phone, giving his mother a glimpse of the world he now inhabited. Dionysia observed the images with a mixture of fascination and disbelief, especially when she saw her son alongside world-famous figures. For her, it was almost impossible to reconcile the boy she knew with the man in the photographs, receiving medals from presidents and posing with international celebrities. As the afternoon progressed, Manny finally revealed the true purpose of his visit. He wanted to take Dionysia to see his house in Manila, even if just for a few days. As expected, she immediately refused, citing her responsibilities in the village, her fear of flying, and her inadequacy for her son's sophisticated world. However, this time Manny was prepared for the resistance, and Quichi, with gentle persistence, explained that he would not take no for an answer. The helicopter was waiting, and a suitcase had already been prepared by Jinky while they were talking. The helicopter flight to Manila was a surreal experience for Dionysia, who clung tightly to her seat, eyes closed during the first few minutes. Gradually, encouraged by her enthusiastic grandchildren, she began to open her eyes to contemplate the Philippines from above for the first time. Rice plantations formed green and golden mosaics, rivers meandered like silver ribbons, and the mountains that had defined the boundaries of her world throughout her life now looked like miniatures beneath her feet. A subtle transformation began to occur in her countenance as her world literally expanded before her eyes. As they flew over Manila, the megalopolis revealed itself in all its chaotic grandeur, gleaming skyscrapers, congested avenues, and the stark contrast between areas of extreme poverty and obscene wealth. When the pilot pointed to Forbes Park, explaining that was where her son lived, Dionysia shook her head in disbelief. How could her Emmanuel, born in a bamboo hut without electricity, now inhabit the same neighborhood that housed billionaires, ambassadors, and the Filipino elite? The helicopter landed smoothly on the private helipad of Manny's mansion, where a small staff of employees waited in formation to receive the boss and his family. Dionysia hesitated as she descended from the aircraft, feeling dramatically out of place in her simple dress and rubber slippers. Manny, sensing his mother's discomfort, dismissed the staff with a discreet gesture, determined to make the transition as smooth as possible for her. The property gates opened to reveal a complex that looked more like a luxury resort than a family residence. Impeccably maintained gardens with native Filipino species lined the path to the main house, an elegant fusion of Spanish colonial architecture and contemporary design. Dionysia walked slowly, as if on sacred ground, her eyes registering every detail with a mixture of admiration and growing discomfort. As they entered the mansion's main hall, with its double-height ceiling and crystal chandeliers, Dionysia finally understood the true magnitude of her son's success. The walls displayed championship belts from different categories, gleaming trophies occupied illuminated display cases, and a monumental staircase led to the upper floors. At that moment, silent tears rolled down the matriarch's wrinkled face. They were not tears of envy or greed, but of pride so intense it bordered on physical pain. Dionysia's first night in the mansion was marked by a mixture of wonder and discomfort. The guest room assigned to her was larger than her entire house in Bukidnon, with a king-size bed that seemed to swallow her in its excessive comfort. The Egyptian cotton sheets, orthopedic mattress, and feather pillows were luxuries that her body, accustomed to the hardness of a straw mat over wooden boards, found deeply strange. After hours of restless turning, she finally fell asleep on a rug on the floor, finding comfort in the familiarity of hardness beneath her back. The next morning, Amihan, the head housekeeper, found Dionysia awake before dawn, having already meticulously arranged the untouched bed and attempting to clean the room with a damp cloth. Gently, Amihan explained that this wasn't necessary, but Dionysia insisted she couldn't remain idle, even as a guest. A silent compromise was established. Dionysia could help in the kitchen, preparing traditional Filipino dishes that Manny had mentioned missing, while the staff maintained their normal functions throughout the rest of the house. During breakfast, served on the veranda overlooking the infinity pool, Manny announced he had planned a special day. First, they would take Dionysia on a tour of the city, showing her important locations in his journey, from the humble gym where he first trained to the Araneta Stadium, where he had won his first significant victories. The idea was to build a bridge between the past they shared and the present they lived separately, helping Dionysia understand each stage of her son's transformation. The city tour was an emotional roller coaster for mother and son. At each location, Manny shared stories Dionysia had never heard. The nights sleeping in cardboard boxes when he had no money for the return fare home. The days surviving on just one meal to save for training equipment. The injuries hidden so as not to worry her. For every story of hardship, there was one of perseverance, each failure followed by an even greater triumph, weaving the complete narrative of a journey she had only partially witnessed. The day culminated with a visit to the central office of the various companies and foundations Manny had established over the years. To Dionysia's surprise, several of these initiatives had been silently implemented in Bukidnon and surrounding areas. Schools built, hospitals equipped, microfinance programs for local farmers, all without fanfare or public recognition. Manny explained there was a reason for keeping these projects discreet. He wanted to help genuinely, not for publicity, but because he vividly remembered his community's needs. The next morning, Manny had a special surprise planned. After breakfast, he led Dionysia to a room in the mansion that remained locked, an area that not even the closest staff members were permitted to enter. With an enigmatic smile, he unlocked the door and invited his mother to enter first. What Dionysia found inside left her momentarily speechless. The room was a meticulous recreation of the humble house they had lived in during Manny's childhood, complete with simple furniture, kitchen utensils identical to those they used, and even the same faded photographs on the walls. In the center of the room, a mannequin wore the first pair of boxing gloves Manny had owned, mended countless times by Dionysia's skilled hands. Beside it, in a glass box, was the first cash prize he had won, along with the letter he had written to his mother, promising that one day he would lift her out of poverty. Tears came instantly for both, as Manny explained that this was his personal sanctuary. The place he came to when he needed to reconnect with his roots and remember the purpose behind every fight, every business, every important decision in his life. Deeply touched by the gesture, Dionysia finally began to open up, sharing her own memories of those difficult times, how she hid her tears when the children were asleep, her constant fear of not being able to feed them the next day, and the painful moment when she had to encourage Manny to leave, knowing the village offered no future for a young man with his determination. These were stories she had never shared before, kept as private burdens she didn't want to impose on her children, but now flowed freely in the safe space created by mutual understanding. That afternoon, Jinky organized a special dinner, inviting Manny's siblings who lived in different parts of the Philippines to reunite with the matriarch. The mansion filled with laughter, animated conversations in the local dialect, and the aroma of traditional Filipino dishes that Dionysia had taught Amihan to prepare throughout the day. To everyone's surprise and delight, Manny had also invited former neighbors from Bukidnon, who had been particularly kind to his family during the years of struggle, providing them a night of celebration that transcended social and economic barriers. As the evening progressed, Dionysia observed her son interacting with relatives and old friends, noting how he remained the same in essence, humble, generous, and deeply connected to his roots, despite all the external transformations. It was at this moment that she finally understood that Manny's true legacy wasn't the boxing titles, mansions, or accumulated fortune, but the integrity with which he had navigated his extraordinary journey, remaining true to himself and the values she had instilled in him since childhood. On the last day of the visit, Manny took Dionysia to a special room on the upper floor of the mansion, his personal office, where he made the most important decisions related to his career and business. The walls were decorated with photographs of crucial moments in his life, honorary degrees from prestigious universities, and thank you letters from people whose lives he had positively impacted. Among all these impressive achievements, Manny pointed to a small framed picture in the center of his desk, a faded photograph of Dionysia, taken when he was just a boy. With emotion in his voice, Manny explained how that photograph had accompanied him at every stage of his journey, from communal dormitories for beginner boxers to luxury hotel suites before world championship fights. It was to that image he looked in moments of doubt, fatigue, or temptation, remembering the example of dignity and perseverance his mother represented. Then, he opened a drawer and removed an envelope, solemnly handing it to Dionysia. Inside the envelope, Dionysia found legal documents she couldn't fully comprehend. With patience, Manny explained that he had established a trust fund in her name, ensuring not only her comfort for the rest of her life, but also the educational future of all children in Bukidnon for the next 20 years. It wasn't charity or showmanship, he emphasized, but a way to honor the silent sacrifice she had made, multiplying its impact to benefit the entire community that had embraced them during the difficult years. That afternoon, before returning to take Dionysia back to Bukidnon, the family gathered for a professional photo session in the mansion's gardens. It was the first formal photograph of Dionysia with her son in his new life, a tangible record of the bridge finally built between the two worlds they inhabited. As she posed awkwardly, still uncomfortable with the attention, Dionysia thought about how she would keep that image in her simple house, a daily reminder that maternal love transcends circumstances, distances, and transformations. In the helicopter, returning to Bukidnon, Dionysia firmly held her son's hand as she watched Manila diminish below them. Something fundamental had changed within her during those days. It wasn't just the understanding of her son's success, but the acceptance of her own role in this extraordinary journey. The silent sacrifice she had made as a single mother had not been in vain. On the contrary, it had multiplied in ways she could never have imagined. When the helicopter finally landed in the village, local residents gathered again to witness her arrival. This time, however, Dionysia descended with her head held high, walking alongside her son with a new sense of belonging to both worlds that now composed the complete story of her family.
Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next cases.